Okay, this is just a review of what we covered yesterday, and I'll make it short and sweet because I don't want to bore you to death. Um, but we talked about lines and polylines basically. We talked a little bit about layers. We'll talk more about that later. And we briefly went over a couple of simple modify or moving commands, that sort of thing. We also talked about the status line, and let me point out the status line below the command line. We can see the location of our cursor. We can also put in grid dots for viewing and to help us track. These are all modals. We didn't talk about this one, but this is for ortho, so you can only draw lines that are straight, either up and down or vertical, horizontal or vertical. And so we had all these tools we talked about. We also talked about how you can right mouse button click and turn these on. I don't want to enable them by going outside the zone. By hitting that and finding the zoning, right mouse button click, going to drafting settings, and then you can set all these up however you want, dynamic input and how you want to look and feel for your particular environment that you like to draft in. So those are just niceties. We also talked about a little bit about the difference between model and paper space. Model space is one-to-one, it's real. Whereas in paper space, that's where we start playing with our paper scales. We talked about the scales over here of what we call viewports. Viewports allow you to have more than one window in a drawing session. You can use these both inside model and paper space. And then we talked a little bit over here about the workspaces, how you can change the toolbar settings so that you can, if you know how to customize your toolbars, you can only work with those tools that you need for at the time and get rid of all the clutter. And then we talked about layers as well. So without going into a lot of detail about any of that, I'll draw a couple of lines just to remind you about how you can draw a line. So typically when you draw a line, you can go up here and use one of the icons off the pull down. You can do that, or you could type L at the command line. You can see it shows up here because I've got my dynamic input showing. So I type L and I specify a point. Now I could be explicit and tell it go to 0, 0 for my last location, or I could tell it to go #0, 0 and go right down to the origin of the drawing file itself. But in this case, I'm just going to click. You can see I can extend this out. Okay, and I've got the tab keys so that I can now type, say, 100 feet, hit the tab, and say I want to draw that at 0. Okay, now I'm still in the line command, so I can continue this. So maybe I want to do the next one at 50 feet, tab, and do 22.5. Okay, still in the command line, so I could do a lot of it that way. Another way I could do this, I didn't talk to you about it, but let me, just for the grins, I'm going to turn off my dynamic input. Okay, so now you don't see my input at all. But from the command line, if you look down at the command line, I'm going to hit @ sign. And now if I follow the @ sign with a distance, say 50 feet, and then a less sign, and I give it an angle of, let's say, well, let's do 45, an angle of 45, and then hit return. You can see it's drawing at that angle of 45. So I'm going to go back here. So just remember that you can draw things that way, although many times we don't. Not anymore. That was the old way of doing it. The one thing I didn't mention to you is that if I wanted to close this out, you can see that I've got to close and undo down here on my command line. If I hit C for close, and as long as I'm in this command, it'll go back to the very beginning point and close it for me. That works also equally as well for a polyline. So I can draw a line and a line, hit C for close, and it will take me right back to where I started. However, if I draw a line or a polyline and I start drawing, and I should break the command and then start up again, and then type close. Remember, it doesn't remember where I started drawing this line. It only remembers where I started the command, the time I started the command. So if I close, it's going to close back to where it remembers I closed last. Easy fix though. I can just grab one end of it and then move it to where I really wanted it to go. Okay? So that's basically drawing lines. Now in this case I've got two polylines, one short one here, and then a polyline you can see. Oh, I was in the line command. Never mind. I've got 4 lines. In the polyline command it does the same thing. I'll hit PL for polyline, and I do recommend you learn those commands if you're going to be in AutoCAD often. Okay. And then I'll hit C for close. Close it. You can see the whole thing highlights and has stretch points on it. So I can then select a point and move them. Okay. So that's just one of the editing options. Grips are becoming more and more powerful, and you'll probably use those a lot more. There are other things that we could draw, which we did not go into yesterday. We talked a bit about the circle, and there's also an arc, 3-point arc, start, center. How do you want to draw your arc? So you have different ways, creation methods to draw an arc, and believe me, these can be confusing at times, how you draw an arc. But they do work, and they're a handy tool. We also have drawing lines. Everybody knows how to draw a center. We also can draw a circle by selecting one of these out of the group. You can do, as you can see in the picture, select 1 in the center, 2 for the radius, or you could just type the radius in that you want. Same with the center and diameter. You type in, or you click at the center of the circle that you want, and then you pull out the direction you want, or you could type in the distance of the diameter. Okay. Then you have a 2-point circle. Easy enough. You draw point 1 and point 2, and you can see in this case they've drawn point 1 and point 2 by selecting an arc, it looks like, and drawn the circle in the center of those arcs. You could also do it with 3-point, just 1, 2, 3, and draw a circle, or you can choose other means of drawing a circle. For instance, let me go ahead, I'm going to draw 2 lines here. Enter. And I will draw a circle based upon the tangent radius. So if I do tangent, it will find the first tangent point on one line, second tangent point on another, and now it's going to ask me for a radius. I'm going to put in a radius of, I'm not even sure what the distance is. I'll try 25. And well, that seemed to fit pretty well. So now it's a tangent between those 2 lines. Another way of drawing a circle is by, let's say, 3 lines. Let me put another line down here. Enter. And the very last pick on this is tangent. So I want to make a circle that's tangent to all 3 lines. So I just touch the 3 lines, and it automatically throws that in. Okay, let's talk a little bit about some of the editing commands, or what we call modify commands. Let me get rid of what I've drawn here on the board. We'll start with a clean slate again. And you can see that we have a number of different tools here that we can use. Some of them you can do with grips, others you don't need the grips, but either way you could always use grips. Moving commands and scaling commands, offset commands, mirroring commands, erase command, array command. This one's explode, when you want to take a piece and explode it. So let's look at some of the basic commands. Let's start out with the basic move command. I'm going to go ahead and draw a rectangle. by the way, there's two ways of drawing a rectangle. Of course, I could have picked it up off here, but I'm just going to draw a point, and I can just come out to a second point and click, or I can give it an XY. So let me give it an XY. We'll give it an X of 60, and I can hit a comma or the tab key, and I will give it a Y of 50. So there, I've drawn a rectangle. With this rectangle now, to move it, basically two ways I can do it. One, I can select it and put the grips on it, and once I've done that, I can go back, hover on top of it, hold down my cursor, it disappears briefly. I get this little square on my cursor, and I can just drag it to where I want. So again, highlight it and move it back. Or I can go into the move command. Now I can use it from up here and hit move. I normally just hit M from the command line and hit enter. Select the objects that I want to move. When I'm done, hit enter again. Select a point to move from and move. Now sometimes we want to be very explicit about where we're moving objects. And let me draw a line here and I'll show you what I mean. I'm going to go ahead and go into the move command again. I'm going to select the object that I want, hit enter, and now I'm going to type track right in the middle of my command. And now what that's done is suspend my first command, and now I'm in what's called a tracking command. What tracking allows me to do is to navigate myself without drawing a line to some other point on the screen. And when you're moving an object, say like a desk or a chair, and you want to make sure it's 6 inches off the wall, this is something you might want to use. So now I'm in the tracking command, and I've got to select where do I want my tracking point to begin. Well, I'm going to hold down my shift key. I am going to then find midpoint. I'm going to find the midpoint of the top of the polyline here. And then I'm going to pull straight up, and I'm going to punch in the letter, let's say 10. And now that I've done that, you can see there's my new track point. If I want to track even further, I can keep doing it, or at this point I could hit enter again, and now I'm back into my move command. And I'm going to move that, and I'm going to, let's move it off the end over there, right there. Move it off the end point of that line. So I know that I'm 10 feet off that line, or 10 meters, or 10 whatever units I want to call it at this point in time. So that's basically how that works. So that's the move command. Very basic, very simple. A lot of times we'll use a command, we'll use that command with another command, or have different ways of working with tools together, like a move command and say scale at the same time. There are other commands that aren't up here on the board. I can show it to you later, that will allow you to do a move and rotate at the same time. In this case,